What a huge win. Kansas State moves the streak to 17.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rao, and welcome on into a reaction show of Kansas State taking down Kansas in Lawrence, 42-17. The streak stays alive, going up to 17 in a row, right here on Locked On Kansas State, your team every day. And we're diving into the Wildcats, moving to 4-4, 500 on the season, but most importantly, they stay alive in the Big 12 race. They moved to 3-2 in the Big 12 race, and we're recording this show a little bit later on today than we normally would, and it's actually worked out in our favor. I'll tell you why later on in this show. Hit that subscribe button, as we are always bringing you Wildcat coverage like no one else every single day, and we're going to dive right into it. We're going to talk about this fantastic defense. Has the identity been finally found? We're going to talk about Avery Johnson, who continues to shine over and over again, really since that first bye week, almost like it was a wake-up call with that Arizona game. This team is completely different. And of course, it doesn't matter if Joe Jackson rushes for 100 yards or not. They still find a way to control the game. And I'll tell you right now, from the very first play of the game, I didn't think that was going to be the case. We're going to dive right into it, and let's start right there. The very first play of the game, Kansas State fumbles the kick return. Bryce Nornberg gets a fumble, one that we've seen that's happened a few times this season, and Kansas not only gets to defer it and get the ball back to start the second half, but they score right away, and it made you think, man, this could be it. Everybody was asking about this narrative. Is it going to happen? Is the streak finally going to end this year? It seems like the perfect season for it to be the case, with everything falling into the right spots for Kansas and Kansas State. Kansas State not having the best season so far, but they are on the right path moving forward. And I will say this, the biggest thing that I take away from all of these wins over the last couple weeks, the win against TCU, the win against Kansas right here, man, does it suck that we did not get that Baylor win. I can't help but think that, because Baylor lost yet again. Iowa State lost again. So now both the teams that we lost to in Big 12 play have 3 losses in the Big 12 conference. They are now behind us when it comes to tiebreakers. You can make the claim that Kansas State is in their own front seat as long as a couple other things go right, with BYU, Arizona State, Cincinnati, one of those teams potentially falling off. You can find yourself to Arlington. All you have to do is keep winning and keep winning. And it would definitely be in a good spot if you won that Baylor game. But looking back, what a great feeling to be. 42-17. Let's go on the offensive side here first, because I thought this was a great game on the defensive side, and we could easily lead with this one because Kansas State's defense is turning into a turnover machine. But Avery Johnson steps up again. And another great game by Avery Johnson. It's not a 300-yard performance, but it doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to be this amazing quarterback when it comes to the statistical yards to win this game against the Jayhawks in Lawrence. Does he have to be a 90% completion passer? No, he only has to go 65%, 11 for 17, 231 yards. But when he threw some of these passes, some of these completions were absolute dimes. He was on point. That pass to Jalon Tibbs, that was just incredible. Yes, the deep ball to Jayce Brown, taxes, deep big play Jayce, and we get to see that almost every single game of the season. And when something about Jayce Brown in the Sunflower Showdowns, this is his first 100-yard receiving game in the Sunflower Showdowns, but he was very close the last 2. I think he had 90-something yards in each of the past 2. This offense was humming. This offense did a really good job overall. I think they did a great job getting the wide receivers, the running game, and the tight ends all involved. I thought the offensive line did a pretty good job. I'm going to be excited to see how it looks when the advanced data comes out. I think overall the run game was better, although you didn't have to rely on it so much. You did work it. Joe Jackson, I think, had 20 carries in this game, only going for 70 yards. But it came to the point to where they could get themselves in a good position to win the football game. Matt Wells' offensive play calling wasn't the greatest. I'm not going to give him an A grade, but I think a B is fair. There was a few times where you look back and said, okay, that's that traditional frustrating Matt Wells offensive play calling when you're throwing like wide receiver screens on second or third and longs, and then or for more of a second and long kind of play, and then setting yourself up for a third and dreadful. That happened a few times, especially towards the end of the second quarter when you could have put Kansas away, and that just didn't work out. But overall, I think Matt Wells had a good play call. I think he was aggressive. I think that in the second half, when they knew that they finally could put them away for good, he didn't let up on the gas. He wasn't as conservative as we saw like he was in the UCF game. And maybe that's just because it was a rivalry game. Maybe that's just because of the energy in Lawrence and obviously knowing that you want to beat this team good, not just have it close like it's been the last couple of years. I'm not sure, but I will give Matt Wells a B on this one. We got to see more of Lincoln Cure. That was fun. Seeing more from Lincoln Cure in this one. He had a couple catches. I think he even had more than the box score even shows because a couple went back for penalties. He only had 2 catches for 18 yards on the stat sheet, but I'm pretty sure we saw him with at least one more. One went back for a penalty, if I remember correctly on that one. But it was fun seeing him get involved. I wanted to see him get in the end zone. That just didn't work out. The receiving touchdowns went to Jayce Brown, a 78-yard bomb, and then Jaron Tibbs had a nice touchdown as well. Jayce Brown, 4 receptions for 160 yards, averaging 40 yards per catch. Just unreal. Just unreal from Jayce Brown. We're going to see him play on Sundays, folks. There's no doubt about that in my mind. And then Jaron Tibbs, 2 receptions for 43 yards, including a 27-yard reception. You got to love what you saw from there. There was only 11 completions in this game. You got 6 of them from those 2 receivers alone, and you got over 200 yards of production from those 2 guys alone as well. I liked what Avery Johnson did overall in this one. You don't have to be a Heisman Trophy caliber kind of player to win the football game if that's not what it's asking you to do. Your defense stepped up. It put you in a good position. You found a way to excel on special teams. You found a way to really win in all facets of the game with the exception of the first play of the game. The defense was kind of startled. They had terrible field position to start that game. That first touchdown that was given to Kansas to get that first quarter touchdown, their only touchdown in the quarter, might I add, was that anything that you should really blame the defense for when they were basically starting off at 1st and goal? I don't. I think overall this team played a really good football game. I think Avery Johnson, we got a win with only 6 carries from him. If you remember the statistical thing we put out over and over again throughout the season, if they get 10 or more carries from Avery Johnson, they're 8-3. If he gets 13 or more, they're undefeated. They didn't need to do that. They didn't need Avery Johnson to be that dual threat quarterback, that MVP, the hero. They didn't need that in this one because it was a good all-around performance. It just kind of got overshadowed initially because of that fumble at the beginning of the game. But Kansas State's special team stood up. The Kansas State offense stood up, and definitely, without question, shout out to Joe Clairman, the defensive coordinator for Kansas State, because what he's got his guys doing over these last 2 games has turned this team around. It's not just the Avery Johnson show anymore at Kansas State. This defense is really making you wonder if they can do the thing and run the table and get themselves back into the conversation of the Big 12 race. It is absolutely possible, and I'm going to say it's all thanks to that defense. Let's talk about that next. The defense deserves its own segment. We're going to do that next right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. All you got to do is pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. If you took Kansas State, obviously you're going to be in a really good, feeling really good about this one. And if you took the over, it found its way over. It was close. It was close, but they found its way on the over. So if you want to dive into the action for NFL Sunday, perfect timing to do so. What are you waiting for? Don't wait anymore. Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Riding high here on a reaction show of Locked On Kansas State. Kansas State taking down Kansas in the Sunflower Showdown for the 17th straight time, 42-17. It feels good having these conversations with you folks when we get these W's. It 100% does. And for 50% of the time so far this season, we can finally say that because Kansas State moves to 500 on the year. They go to 4-4. But most importantly, as I just mentioned, 3-2 in Big 12 play. And if you start looking at those Big 12 standings, Kansas State is just creeping on up. And some of the results that have happened so far on this college football Saturday, and we'll talk about them in just a second, are falling in favor for Kansas State. The last 4 weeks of the season, take out the open weeks, the last 4 games of the season for Kansas State are going to be a lot of fun with a lot riding on them, especially next week in Manhattan against Texas Tech. And if this defense, after what it did against TCU and after what it did today against Kansas, continues this streak, I don't know if any team can beat this Wildcat squad. 4 turnovers, a season high for this defense against Kansas. They dominated Jalon Daniels. I put out a segment on Friday's episode, and I said, if Kansas State wants to win, they have to contain Jalon Daniels. They didn't just contain him. They shut him down. They flustered him. They put so much pressure on Jalon Daniels. They went to a break at one point. I can't remember if it was the second or third quarter, but there was a point in this game where they looked at Jalon Daniels, and it looked like he was about to just physically lose it. He looked like he was trying to get himself into the right zone, the right spot. He doesn't seem like he was mentally there because he just kept getting beat up. He was getting hit so many times, and that gets to you over and over again. And for the final time, Jalon Daniels can't do what it takes to do. Can't beat Kansas State in the Sunflower Showdown. He'll go down as a quarterback that could never do it. He'll go down as a quarterback that could never beat the streak, along with the rest of this class that's graduating from Kansas this year, because for the 17th straight time, Kansas State takes care of Kansas in the Sunflower Showdown. 2008 will live large for Kansas another year. One more year, and a lot of thanks to that is to the defense. They had an amazing, it wasn't even a block punt, but they recovered a punt. It was a botched snap that kind of really put the team back into conversation. After, their special teams blunder, Kansas State steps back with a good special teams blunder of their own. Chris Klieman said after the game that they were coming. They were bringing everything. He even warned the refs. He said, watch out, we're bringing it. And he said, even though they had a bobbled snap or a messed up snap on that punt, they didn't stand a chance either way. He was bringing the whole house. He wasn't planning on covering anybody on that punt. They were there to send a message. And I think this was probably one of my most favorite press conferences I heard from Chris Klieman after the game, because you could tell how much this game really meant to him and the players. He tried to push it off on Monday, tried to pretend that it wasn't a big deal. But deep down inside, after listening to that press conference from Chris Klieman, that was absolutely the complete opposite of the case, which we all knew. He was trying to do a little coach speak and keep his players focused, but you knew that he was riding high on getting this win because he doesn't want to be the coach that loses the streak. No one wants that. So, of course, it's a big win for Chris Klieman, at least getting one of the rivals wins. He couldn't win in Dublin against Iowa State, but he makes sure he takes care of the streak in Lawrence to continue on with the Sunflower Showdown, 17 in a row. 4 turnovers for Kansas State here. Only 1 turnover for Kansas, for Kansas State on the offensive side, if you will, I guess to be special teams, but they won the turnover margin by 3. 2 fumbles lost by Kansas, 2 interceptions thrown. Jalon Daniels just had a really tough game overall. There wasn't a lot of really good things to say about what Kansas did. There was a couple small moments where, especially at the end, probably their best time, if I had to give a one nod to Kansas, would be their final drive heading into halftime. There was a moment where it felt like, and maybe this was just the PTSD of me talking of the season so far, but it felt like, kind of gave me the Army vibes, where they drove down in the second half, scored immediately, and then they got the ball back, and then everything kind of fell into place. The defense kind of felt gassed at the end of the second quarter. That was probably the only time where I felt like Kansas had any type of momentum other than that fumble at the beginning of the game, was towards the end of the second quarter. But the adjustments made by Chris Klieman, by Joe Klannerman, by Matt Wells, by the entire coaching staff at halftime proved to just work out just fine. and they outscored Kansas 21-3 in the second half. And that really is what did it, really put the nail in the hammer in whatever it needs to take. I can't even say analogies right on this show today, just to make it done and win 42-17. It feels good when you get this win. It feels really good when you move to 17 in a row. It feels really good when Des Purnell, a player that had 2 interceptions, including a pick 6 against TCU, you think, well, man, that was like the greatest game he's ever had. He never had interception before. He's probably going to regress the next game. It just kind of makes sense, right? No, it didn't happen. He almost got another interception. He had a great deflection, which he probably could have got an interception. Would have been a tough catch. I'm not going to put that one on him. But he had a sack. It felt like he was everywhere on the field. He had 9 tackles in the game, according to ESPN statistics. That's unofficial. And he also had 5 solo tackles. I mean, outstanding game by Des Purnell. You know, we get to talk about this linebacking core, of how great this linebacking core could be. And it was one of those kind of conversations that we've had this entire season where they haven't lived up to potential. With the Austin Romaine conversation, who looked like he was wearing some sort of club or something that was protecting something on his hand or wrist in this game. Overall, this linebacking core is really starting to step up these last couple weeks, and not just the linebacking core. It's been the entire defense. The secondary did a great job. Really excited to see the defensive analytical stats, the advanced stats for the defense heading out. We'll have you covered during the week as we get prepared for Texas Tech, who really shined when it comes to those statistics later on this week. But I think they did well. Gunnar Maldonado had a really good game. I think Wesley Fair had a good game from what I could see from the eye test. Zayshawn Rich looked like he stepped up big time in this game. And then the defensive line was outstanding multiple times. Thursday's conversation with Joe Klannerman, he talked about how players on the defensive line had to step up because of the loss of Tobias Usami. And he mentioned 2 names in particular. He mentioned Ryan Davis and he mentioned Jordan Allen. Multiple times in this game, including multiple times on the same drive, both Ryan Davis and Jordan Allen stepped up big time. Huge. I think each of them had a sack on the game. They total had 4 sacks. Kansas State had 4 sacks in this one. Desmond Purnell had 1. Malcolm Alcorn Crowder had 1 as well. It was the final sack of the game. And then you had 1 from Ryan Davis. And then Jordan Allen and Chidi Obiizor shared 1. But if I remember, it was Jordan Allen that had like the first sack on that portion. They were everywhere. They were everywhere on this game. And I love it. I love what I'm seeing from this defense. It's the type of feeling that you get. This is the feeling we should have had after Iowa State. This is the feeling we should have had after Baylor. And those were, robbed from us because of just, some unfortunate things that happened late in the games. This team is playing like a team that could be a college football playoff caliber team. Does that happen? Probably not, because of the way that the season started. But what should make you excited is that this team is not quitting. There was moments where it felt like that could be the case. And maybe some players are. Maybe there's some players who are not dressed, who have been ruled out in certain games, that have decided to pack it in. I don't know. That's not something that we're here to speculate on. But however, you can tell that the players that are out here on the field and playing this one, and of course, it's the high energy of the Sunflower Showdown. These guys did not pack it in whatsoever. And because of that, they found themselves from moving to get back into things and win and go to 4-4 on the season and continue to stay away from that dreadful 3rd loss in Big 12 play. You get that one and Arlington's out the window. You have found a way to go and stay in that type of zone. You found a way to do it yet again. You got 3 wins and you got to keep that going. You got 4 more Big 12 games. If you can make it happen, if you can move to 7-2, you stand a chance. It's not guaranteed, but I can tell you right now, it's your best chance at finding a way to do that. And an 8-4 team in Arlington, fine. You can rain parades. You can rain on the parade of any other team, like a BYU or a Texas Tech. If you can find a way to make it happen, it's just possible. And that's what I want to talk about next on this one. Obviously, a lot of excitement, a lot of good stuff on this reaction show. Drop your comments, what you think about this game. I mean, there's a lot of really good stuff. I want to answer your questions during the week. So if you have a question or comment, leave it in this video or any video over the last couple of weeks. We'll answer them during the week. I want to start diving into those segments. I want to hear more from the viewer. Overall, I really like what I've seen here from Kansas State. I have to give just a nod of appreciation. How about Ralph Ortiz? What a nice redemption from Ralph Ortiz. He had a weird personal foul penalty where he was actually not in the play. The play ran to the Kansas State sideline, and Ralph Ortiz pushed the Jayhawk player out of the way to help pull up his teammate. The ref pulled a flag on him, and he was charged 15 yards in his first unsportsmanlike penalty of the game. One more, you get disqualified. So, obviously you haven't heard a lot from Ralph Ortiz this season. And then in the Sunflower Showdown, you get that kind of unsportsmanlike penalty. But then things change. He's the one that gets the scoop and score on the special teams to score the touchdown. Redemption story for Ralph Ortiz. It's fun when we get to see these transfer players like him and Quay Moss and just a couple other players, obviously you mentioned, make huge plays. And of course, that's what we're seeing over the last couple weeks for Kansas State. All right, let's continue to dive in more on this. Let's talk about what we're seeing in the Big 12 right now, because since we're talking in this episode a little bit later, some of these other scores have gone final, and I will say it's benefiting Kansas State. Let's talk about that next to finish up this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. But first, this episode of Locked On Kansas State is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Well, Mazda brings this same intention to how we craft every model. With an all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Welcome back to Locked On Kansas State reaction show as Kansas State takes down Kansas 42-17 in the Sunflower Showdown for the 17th straight time. And it feels good because you continue on and stay in contention for the Big 12 race. And let's look into this right now. We're recording this podcast, this reaction show a little bit later than usual, but it works out for this segment because two teams that you lost to in Big 12 play, your only two losses in the season, also lost today. BYU took down Iowa State 41-27. BYU moves to 8-0 on the season, 5-0 in Big 12 play. They were ranked 11th heading into the week. They're probably going to be in the top 10. They should have been in the top 10, but they're going to most likely be once this week is over. Remember, Kansas State doesn't play BYU. So this is one of those teams where you either want them to just, that's the team that you can just let go, or maybe they falter later on in the year. But Iowa State here with the loss moves to 5-3 on the season, still better record overall than Kansas State. But when you look at that Big 12 record, they are now 2-3. They add that third dreadful loss to the Big 12 standings, and you could make the argument that Iowa State is now out of contention to get to Arlington. I think that's true. I think that's absolutely true. And that week 0 game, other than the fact that you have a loss yourself, doesn't hurt you as badly because they no longer hold that tiebreaker over you in a sense because they're below you in the conference standings. Same thing happened to Baylor today. They lost to Cincinnati, who Cincinnati moves to 7-1 and 5-0 in Big 12 play. Also, don't play Cincinnati. Those two teams, BYU and Cincinnati, are going to be the two teams that really bug you if you're a Kansas State fan the rest of the way. I'll explain why in a minute. But Baylor moves to 4-4 on the year, the same as Kansas State, but they moved to 2-3 in Big 12 play. So they are below. They're below Kansas State as well after losing 41-20 in this one. Sawyer Robertson, a guy that you think was going to be amazing over this entire season, only threw for 137 yards and 2 touchdowns against Cincinnati. Cincinnati might be one of those dark horse beasts. Maybe we're just not talking about them enough. Obviously, we're not. They're ranked 21st in the country, and I think they're only going to go a little bit more. We got Texas Tech next week. They didn't falter by any ways or stretches of the imagination. They also moved to 7-1 on the season, 4-1 in Big 12 play after taking down Oklahoma State 42-0. But check that out. They are 4-1 in Big 12 play. If you win next week, even though they might be 7-2 and you're 5-4, you have the edge on them in Big 12 play when it comes to who goes to Arlington. Next week is the week. You have to win to stay alive. If you lose, it's over. You're in the same spot as Baylor and Iowa State. You're below them because of the tiebreakers. You win next week, things start to change. Things start to change. Then you hope for 1 or 2 losses from either BYU or Cincinnati. Doesn't have to be both teams. Just needs to be one of them. And it's a completely different feeling for the rest of the route. As we record this one, TCU's up against West Virginia 20-7 at halftime. You took care of TCU, remember? So if they win, that's fine. They still only have 2 losses in Big 12 play, though, but you do own the tiebreaker over them. Houston and Arizona State play later on today. That is a game where one of them is going to get 2 losses in the Big 12. One of them is to keep winning. It doesn't matter who gets that loss. You don't play either of those teams. You need to get them both behind you eventually. So if you want to look at the rest of their schedules and then say who has a better chance of winning out, well, then you want that team to lose in this one. And then Utah and Colorado taking on each other. And again, you play Utah later on. They already have 2 losses in the Big 12. You got to win to take care of business. So that one really doesn't matter as well. The biggest focus here, if you're listening to this now and you're still trying to find something to watch for the rest of the night, is pay attention to Houston and Arizona just to see what needs to be done the rest of the way. But overall, this has been a really good week for Kansas State to get yourself back into Big 12 contention. When you look at the rest of the standings right now, as they sit right now, Kansas State is sitting, let's say, tied for 6th in the Big 12 standings. That's a lot better than I expected them to be after losing to Army and almost losing to an FCS school, right? They have really turned this season around. And if you don't think 8-4 is possible, I want to point you to watch Chris Kleiman's press conference after what he talked about in the game today. You can find it on YouTube. Kansas State's official spot put it up. I think also like On3 or 24/7 also puts up a copy of it as well. And what he said, he talked about the energy. He said so many people were doubting Kansas State in this game for the Sunflower Showdown, saying this is the year we're finally going to beat you. And they took that personally. You know, cue the Michael Jordan meme here where they took it personally. They want to take care of things, get it done, and they put the hurt on them. Texas Tech beat Kansas the exact same score that Kansas State beat Kansas, 42-17. Texas Tech did a lot of things in the portal. And you're probably thinking right now, there's no way that Texas Tech is going to lose to Kansas State. There's no way that Kansas State can beat Texas Tech because look what they've done. Look at what they've done against all these other teams so far this season. That's the same type of energy that Chris Kleiman's going to bring in this week. He said it was a completely different locker room this week because of the energy of feeling that they had a chip on their shoulder. What kind of chip you think they're going to have again if Chris Kleiman and the rest of the coaching staff bring that in, that same energy, and say, everybody's saying you can't beat this transfer portal roster. Everybody's saying you can't beat this team that's seen as a team that could be a national championship contender. Everybody's talking about McGuire's squad. They're going to come into your house and beat you? That's probably going to happen. And they're going to find a way to use that energy, just like they did in the Sunflower Showdown, and put Texas Tech on upset alert. Let's call it now. They can definitely do that. They can definitely find themselves to 8-4. They can find themselves 7-2 in conference play if they keep playing the exact same way they've been playing the last few weeks, especially on the defensive side, where you don't have to make Avery Johnson be the hero, and he just keeps playing consistent good football where he doesn't turn the ball over himself. If you do that, you have yourself a really good rest of the season. Where 8-4 might get you Arlington, might not, but it gets you into a really good bowl game. It gets you into a successful rest of the season. Finds your chances at another 9-win year potentially if you get a bowl win. And then the momentum shifts and turns right back over again. I'll take that. After the way the season started, if we can continue that route, I'll take that all day long. Let me know your thoughts in the comment description below. Lots of stuff to talk about this week as Texas Tech comes into Manhattan. It's going to be a crazy game. You're potentially bringing in an AP top 10 team in the country. I have a feeling, just a guess, AP results obviously haven't come out yet, but just based on all the other results that have happened across college football, they started 14th in the country. I'm going to guess they're going to be 11 or 12. That's my guess when it's all said and done. But that's who's coming to Manhattan this week. We'll have you covered on everything you need about the game. And with college basketball starting up, we got exhibitions to talk about. We got women's basketball and men's basketball to talk about, all that stuff right here on Locked On Kansas State. So please like the video, please subscribe, and we'll see you back here next time right here on Locked On Kansas State.